Hello. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Clarista Demo Days, where we dive into the real use cases Clarista unlocks. Today, we'll be focusing on financial advisors and how Clarista helps them stay prepared, proactive, and always client ready. According to McKinsey, the share of affluent investors demanding holistic, personalized advice has nearly doubled in just 5 years. The Investment Advisor Association reports that financial advisors now manage a record $145 trillion in assets for 68 million clients. And eMoney estimates the industry faces a shortage of nearly 100,000 advisors over the next decade. So the picture is clear. Demand is rising, portfolios are more complex, and clients expect personalization, but the capacity to deliver is shrinking. That's the pressure financial advisors are working under today. And here's why that challenge is so great. Most portfolio tools stop at the surface. They show account totals, but don't expose the real holdings and exposures across brokerage accounts and insurance products like VULs, IULs, or variable annuities. Meanwhile, insurers in the US manage about 1.5 trillion in variable annuity liabilities, part of 4.5 trillion in life and annuity assets. Clients are also facing an expanding spectrum of complex products. And clients no longer want generic commentary. They expect advice tied directly to their own holdings and goals. With more clients, more products, and fewer advisors, scaling that level of personalization has felt impossible. That's the gap Clarista was built to close. Here's a portfolio with brokerage accounts, insurance policy statements, and research. Clarista automatically extracts information from all of these documents into what's known as smart tables. No rekeying, no scrolling PDFs, just the clarity financial advisors need in seconds. But still, as a financial advisor, I need to make sense of all of this. I need to connect the dots, and I need to make an intelligent recommendation to my client. Except this time, the Clarista AI agents will work alongside me. But before we dive into the outputs, let's see how the agent actually works. It doesn't just jump to an answer. Instead, it builds a mental model of my objectives first. To do that, it uses a variety of tools to make sense of my world. For example, what you're seeing here is a mind map, which helps me understand the relationships in Deacon portfolio at a glance. I can see things like asset allocation, geographical exposure, my top holdings, all of this in a single view dynamically created. Additionally, facts then anticipate the questions clients are most likely to ask. What are the top 5 holdings in my portfolio by allocation? Which funds are primarily held in the Lincoln Financial Asset Edge VUL policy? This is the informed first strategy. Rather than waiting for prompts, Clarista proactively equips the advisor with the insights needed to enter every meeting prepared. But now comes the real personalization. Clarista generates a tailored client brief. Now I'll use this brief to get a better sense of my client's portfolio and to think of smart recommendations for my client. For example, in the GDP growth, I can see here that the US is at 1.5%. It's slowing, but steady. Europe and Japan are barely growing, under 1%. China is still decent at 4.7%, but clearly cooling. And then India, 6.4% and holding strong. I think for clients, I'd frame it this way. Diversification isn't US versus Europe anymore. It's US resilience balanced by India's momentum, with China no longer being the sole growth engine. Let's keep rolling. All right, let's explore dollar risks, inflation plus US dollar outlook. This is interesting. Inflation is easing, but the US stays higher than Europe. The Fed will cut, yet credibility concerns and big deficits weigh on the dollar. That tells me the dollar isn't the automatic safe haven we've always assumed. With clients, I'd probably say that we can't rely on the US dollar strength to cushion shocks the way we used to. Let's keep rolling here. All right, structural versus noise. Yeah, so it looks like politics and tariffs dominate the headlines, but the real compounding comes from structural drivers like AI, energy, longevity. With clients, I'd probably shift the focus from the short-term noise to these long arcs where wealth really builds. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. As you can see, this brief gives me a clean story, showing US, India as the outlier, dollar credibility and question, and structural themes that matter more than the headlines. That's exactly the clarity I want before sitting down with a client. So far, we've seen how Clarista prepares both the advisor and the client, but what about the last 10 minutes before a call? What about whenever I'm frantically prepping for this client call and I just didn't have enough time to review everything? That's where the podcast comes in. With Clarista, an advisor can generate a 10-minute prep podcast to refresh on a client's portfolio and prepare for the discussion at hand. Take the Walker Family Trust, for example. Ahead of a meeting with William and Patricia, instead of flipping through PDFs crazily, instead, as an advisor, I'll just press play and hear the portfolio summarized in plain language. So instead of scrambling through reports right before the meeting, I can walk in calm, confident, and ready. Clarista turns this preparation into a competitive advantage for me and my team. So we open today with a challenge. Demand for personalized advice is rising, products and portfolios are more complex than ever, and the advisor base itself is shrinking. That's the pressure the profession is working under. Clarista is the intelligence layer that makes that pressure manageable. It delivers the full life cycle: aggregation across custodians and carriers, portfolio analysis with AI scaffolding, personalized briefs for clients, audio prep podcasts for advisors. So the equation changes. More clients, more complexity, fewer advisors, now met with a new intelligence layer. That's what Clarista delivers, enabling financial advisors to stay prepared, proactive, and always client ready. Thank you for tuning into this week's session of Clarista Demo. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Hello, William and Patricia. It's great to connect with you today. I'm looking forward to our discussion, where we'll review the current market conditions and evaluate how your investment portfolio is positioned. Our goal for this podcast is clear. We'll highlight the potential opportunities and risks in the market landscape, and I'll present some actionable recommendations tailored specifically for you. I want you to know that this will be a concise, data-driven update. By the end, you'll have a clearer understanding of the financial landscape and how we can make informed decisions moving forward. So, let's dive right in. Let's take a closer look at the current market landscape. As we navigate through 2025, we're seeing global growth moderating. Particularly, the persistence of inflation, especially in services and wages, is putting pressure on tech valuations. This inflationary backdrop, while challenging, emphasizes the continued importance of diversifying our approach. We're witnessing that mega-cap tech stocks are still leading the market, but it's essential to recognize the potential volatility this brings to your portfolio. Moreover, the Federal Reserve's stance of higher for longer regarding interest rates introduces a layer of complexity. We must consider the risk of policy missteps here, which can lead to market disruptions. Liquidity is another critical factor at play. We've seen liquidity waves that significantly influence both equities and cryptocurrencies. These waves can create opportunities.
And that's the difference. Instead of scrambling through reports right before my meeting with a client, I walk in calm, confident, and ready. Clarista turns preparation into a competitive advantage. So we open today with the challenge. Demand for personalized advice is rising. Products and portfolios are more complex than ever. And the advisor base itself is shrinking. That's the pressure the profession is working under. Clarista is the intelligence layer that makes that pressure manageable. It delivers the full life cycle, aggregation across custodians and carriers, portfolio analysis with AI scaffolding, personalized briefs for clients, audio prep podcasts for advisors. So the equation changes. More clients, more complexity, fewer advisors, now met with a new intelligence layer. That's what Clarista delivers, enabling financial advisors to stay prepared, proactive, and always client ready. Thank you for tuning in to this session of Clarista Demo Days. We look forward to seeing you next time.